It started with a simple fence, a small boundary dispute between neighbors. But as the Wilsons soon discovered, one man's fence was another man's war. And in this fight, only one side would emerge victorious, even if it meant taking everything. The midday sun beat down relentlessly as Jack Wilson stared across the freshly erected fence, his brow furrowed in disbelief. Just yesterday, this had been his land, his family's for generations. Now, a solid wooden barrier stood between him and his property, a silent declaration of ownership by his neighbor, the Petersons. Jack marched over, his fists clenched. "What the hell is this?" he demanded, glaring at his neighbor. Mr. Peterson looked up coolly. "This is my fence, Jack. I had it installed last night. The survey showed the property line runs right through your yard, so everything on this side belongs to me now." "That's complete bull." Jack started, but his wife, Sarah, placed a hand on his arm, her eyes pleading with him to stay calm. "Mr. Peterson, there must be some mistake," she said, her voice trembling. "We've always maintained this land. It's been ours for decades." Peterson shrugged. "Well, the surveys don't lie. I'm sorry, but this is my property now. I suggest you start packing up whatever you can. You're trespassing on my land." Jack felt a surge of rage. This was his home, his life. How dare this man waltz in and claim it as his own? "I'm not going anywhere," he growled. "This is our land, and you have no right to just." "Jack, please," Sarah begged, her grip tightening on his arm. "Let's not make this worse. We can talk to a lawyer, figure this out." Reluctantly, Jack nodded, his eyes burning with fury as he glared at the smug Peterson. "This isn't over," he spat, before turning and storming back into the house, Sarah hurrying behind him. Once inside, Jack paced the living room, his mind racing. "I can't believe this. That son of a bitch is trying to steal our home." Sarah placed a hand on his shoulder, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I know, but we have to stay calm. We'll find a way to fix this, I promise." Jack took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. "You're right. I need to talk to a lawyer, figure out our options. There's no way I'm letting that bastard take our land without a fight." With renewed determination, Jack picked up the phone, already dialing the number of the best real estate attorney in town. This was war, and he was determined to win, no matter the cost. The following morning, Jack and Sarah sat across from their lawyer, Frank Hardesty, his brow furrowed in concentration as he reviewed the documents. "Well, it seems the Petersons do have a valid claim to the property," Frank said, his voice grave. "The recent survey shows the line runs right through your backyard." Jack slammed his fist on the table. "That's impossible. We've owned this land for decades. There's no way the boundary just changed overnight." Frank held up a hand. "I understand your frustration, Jack, but the facts are clear. The Petersons have the paperwork to prove their ownership." Sarah placed a trembling hand on Jack's arm. "So what does this mean for us?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Frank leaned back in his chair, a sympathetic look on his face. "I'm afraid it means you'll have to vacate the property. The Petersons can legally evict you if you refuse to leave." Jack felt his heart plummet. This couldn't be happening. This was their home, their life. "There has to be something we can do," he pleaded. "Can't we challenge the survey? Or—" "I'm afraid it's not that simple," Frank interrupted. "The survey was conducted by a reputable firm, and the property records clearly show the Petersons as the rightful owners. Legally, you have no claim to the land." Jack felt a sinking feeling in the pit of his stomach. This was a nightmare, a cruel twist of fate. "So you're telling me we have to just give up? Let them take everything we've worked for?" Frank sighed, a sympathetic look in his eyes. "I'm sorry, Jack, but unless you can find some compelling evidence to dispute the ownership, I don't see any other option. The Petersons are well within their rights to take possession of the property." Sarah let out a choked sob, and Jack felt his heart break. This couldn't be happening. They had to find a way to fight back, to save their home. Somehow, he would find a way to beat the Petersons at their own game, even if it meant playing dirty. Jack paced the living room, his mind racing. He couldn't accept defeat, not when his home and everything he had worked for was on the line. There has to be something we can do, he muttered, his fingers running through his hair in frustration. Sarah watched him, her eyes red from crying. What are you thinking, Jack? Frank said, we don't have a legal leg to stand on. Jack turned to her, a glint of determination in his eyes. Then we'll have to find another way. Something that the Petersons can't argue with in court. Sarah's brow furrowed in concern. What are you suggesting? You're not going to do anything illegal, are you? Jack shook his head. Of course not. But we need to fight fire with fire. If the Petersons want to play dirty, then so be it. He began pacing again, his mind whirring with ideas. First, we need to dig deeper into their past, see if we can find any skeletons in their closet. Maybe something we can use as leverage. Sarah's eyes widened. Jack, are you sure that's a good idea? That sounds an awful lot like blackmail. It's not blackmail, Jack insisted. It's just gathering information. We need to level the playing field, Sarah. The Petersons clearly have the upper hand, and if we're going to win this, we need to find a way to tip the scales in our favor. Sarah chewed on her lip, uncertainty written all over her face. I don't know, Jack. This all sounds so risky. What if we get caught? Jack stopped pacing and pulled her into a tight embrace. We won't get caught, he murmured. I promise. We're just going to do a little digging, that's all. And if we find something juicy, well, let's just say the Petersons might be more willing to negotiate. Sarah sighed, relenting. All right, I trust you. But please, be careful, okay? I can't bear the thought of losing our home. Jack pressed a kiss to her forehead, a determined gleam in his eye. Don't worry, Sarah. I'll do whatever it takes to keep this house, even if it means playing a little dirty. With that, he pulled away and headed for the door, his mind already whirring with a plan of action. The Petersons had declared war, and Jack was more than ready to fight back. The next few days saw Jack and Sarah immersed in a frantic search for any dirt on the Petersons. They combed through public records, scoured the internet, and even reached out to some questionable contacts in their search for leverage. Finally, after hours of painstaking investigation, a lead emerged. Jack's eyes widened as he read through the documents, a triumphant grin spreading across his face. Sarah, I think we've got them, he said, his voice barely containing his excitement. Sarah looked up, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. What is it, Jack? What did you find? It seems our dear neighbors, the Petersons, have a few skeletons in their closet, Jack replied, his fingers drumming on the table. It looks like they've been dodging their taxes for years, and there's even a whiff of financial fraud in their business dealings. Sarah's eyes widened. Are you serious? Can we use that against them? Jack nodded, his expression grim. Oh, we can definitely use this. The IRS and the SEC will be very interested in what we've uncovered. And if the Petersons want to avoid a world of trouble, they'll have to do a little more than just hand over the deed to our house. Sarah's brow furrowed. Jack, I don't know about this. Blackmailing them? Isn't that illegal? Jack waved a dismissive hand. It's not blackmail, my dear. It's simply leveraging the information we've gathered to protect our interests. The Petersons are the ones who started this whole mess, and now they're going to have to pay the price. Sarah chewed on her lip, clearly uneasy with the direction this was taking. But what if they fight back? What if they expose us for digging into their personal affairs? Jack leaned back in his chair, a cocky grin on his face. They won't. Trust me, Sarah, the Petersons are going to be too busy trying to cover their own asses to worry about us. All we have to do is make them an offer they can't refuse. With that, Jack began drafting a letter, his fingers flying across the keyboard. Sarah watched, torn between admiration and trepidation, as her husband prepared to wage an all-out war against their seemingly untouchable neighbors. The Petersons were just sitting down to dinner when the envelope arrived, delivered by a stern-faced courier. Mr. Peterson's brow furrowed as he tore it open, his eyes widening with each passing second. "What is it, dear?" Mrs. Peterson asked, her voice laced with concern. Mr. Peterson's face paled as he read the contents of the letter. It's from the Wilsons," he stammered. They've uncovered some rather unsavory information about our business dealings." Mrs. Peterson's eyes widened. "What? How could they have found out about that?" Mr. Peterson shook his head, his hands trembling. "I'm not sure, but they're threatening to expose it all to the authorities unless we agree to their demands." "Their demands?" Mrs. Peterson's voice rose in panic. "What demands?" Mr. Peterson swallowed hard. "They want us to deed the property back to them. They say if we don't, they'll make sure the IRS and the SDC come down on us like a ton of bricks." Mrs. Peterson's face twisted in fury. "That's outrageous. We can't just let them blackmail us like this." Mr. Peterson held up a hand, his expression grim. "I'm afraid we don't have much choice, dear. If this information gets out, it could ruin us. We'll have to comply with their demands." Mrs. Peterson opened her mouth to protest, but her husband cut her off. I know. It's not fair, but we can't risk everything we've built. We'll just have to swallow our pride and give in to their ridiculous request." Fuming, Mrs. Peterson slammed her fist on the table. "This is an absolute travesty. Those Wilsons have no right to—" "Honey, please," Mr. Peterson interrupted, his voice weary. "Let's just get this done. The sooner we hand over the deed, the sooner we can put this whole mess behind us." Reluctantly, Mrs. Peterson nodded, her eyes narrowed in a glare. The Wilsons had won this round, but she vowed that one day she would find a way to get her revenge. Jack and Sarah watched with a mixture of triumph and unease as the Petersons' lawyer handed over the deed to their property. The victory had come at a price, and they both knew it. "Well, I'll be," Jack murmured, his fingers tracing the crisp, legal document. "I can't believe it actually worked." Sarah placed a hand on his arm, her expression solemn. "I know, but Jack, I can't help but feel a little uneasy about all this. Blackmailing the Petersons doesn't sit right with me." Jack sighed, pulling her into a tight embrace. "I know, honey. Believe me, I'm not proud of the way things turned out, but we had no choice. The Petersons were trying to steal our home, and we had to fight back." Sarah nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I just hope we don't end up regretting this. What if they find a way to retaliate?" Jack pressed a kiss to her forehead, his grip tightening. "Don't worry, Sarah. We've got the upper hand now. The Petersons know better than to mess with us again." As the lawyer departed, Jack and Sarah stood on the porch, surveying the familiar surroundings. The fence that had once divided their property now stood as a symbol of their victory, a reminder of the lengths they had gone to protect their home. "It's over, Sarah," Jack said, his voice tinged with relief. "We can finally put this whole ordeal behind us." Sarah nodded, though her expression remained troubled. "I hope so, Jack. I really hope so." In the distance, the Petersons' house stood in silent witness, its windows dark and ominous. Jack couldn't shake the feeling that this was not the end, but merely the calm before the storm. "We'll be ready for them, whatever they try," he murmured, his jaw set with determination. "No one's taking our home from us again." With a deep breath, Jack ushered Sarah inside, determined to reclaim the sense of peace and security they had once taken for granted. But as the shadows lengthened, a foreboding sense of unease crept into their hearts, hinting that the battle was far from over. Days turned into weeks, and the Wilsons settled back into their home, slowly trying to recapture the sense of security they had once taken for granted. But the looming presence of the Petersons, just across the property line, weighed heavily on their minds. One evening, as Jack and Sarah were enjoying a quiet dinner, a loud knocking at the door shattered the peace. Jack's heart sank as he opened it to find a grim-faced police officer standing on the porch. "Mr. Wilson?" the officer asked, his voice devoid of emotion. Jack swallowed hard, his mind racing. "Yes, that's me. What's this about?" "I'm afraid I have a warrant for your arrest," the officer said, producing a set of handcuffs. "You're being charged with blackmail and extortion." Sarah let out a strangled gasp, her eyes wide with panic. "What? No, there must be some mistake. Jack didn't do anything wrong." The officer turned to her, his expression unreadable. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but the evidence seems to indicate otherwise. Your husband is going to have to come with me." Jack felt his world crumbling around him as the officer cuffed his hands behind his back. "This can't be happening," he muttered, his voice laced with disbelief. "We were just trying to protect our home." "That may be so, sir, but the law doesn't look kindly on blackmail, no matter the circumstances," the officer replied, ushering Jack towards the waiting patrol car. Sarah watched in horror, tears streaming down her face. "Jack? No, you can't do this. Please, you have to listen to us." But the officer ignored her pleas, and within moments, Jack was gone, leaving Sarah alone, her heart shattered and her dreams of a peaceful life in ruins. As the sirens faded into the distance, Sarah sank to her knees, her body racked with sobs. The Petersons had won, and she had no idea how they would ever recover from this devastating blow. Months passed, and Sarah found herself navigating a seemingly endless maze of courtrooms and legal proceedings, all while trying to hold onto the last shreds of her family's life. The Petersons, it seemed, had pulled out all the stops, using their wealth and influence to bury the Wilsons in a mountain of charges and accusations. As the trial date approached, Sarah's hope began to dwindle. The evidence against Jack was damning, and the prosecutor showed no signs of leniency. It seemed that the Petersons had won, and there was nothing she could do to stop them. But then a glimmer of hope emerged. Sarah, in a moment of desperation, had unearthed a key piece of evidence that cast doubt on the Petersons' own financial dealings. It was a long shot, but she knew it was her last chance to save her husband and their home. The day of the trial arrived, and Sarah watched with bated breath as her lawyer presented the new evidence, meticulously dismantling the Petersons' accusations piece by piece. The courtroom erupted in gasps and murmurs as the truth began to unravel, revealing the Petersons' own shady business practices. In the end, it was a moment of pure poetic justice. The judge, visibly outraged by the Petersons' deception, not only dismissed the charges against Jack, but also ordered the couple to surrender their own home as restitution for their crimes. As the Petersons were led away in handcuffs, Jack and Sarah embraced, tears of joy and relief streaming down their faces. They had weathered the storm, fought against insurmountable odds, and emerged victorious. "We did it, Sarah," Jack whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "We saved our home." Sarah nodded, her heart overflowing with pride and gratitude. "Yes, we did, and we'll never take it for granted again." Hand in hand, the Wilsons returned to their property, the hated fence now a distant memory. They had proven that no matter how steep the odds, love and determination could overcome even the most formidable of foes. As they stepped through the front door, they knew that this was more than just a victory over their neighbors. It was a triumph of the human spirit, a testament to the power of perseverance in the face of adversity. And for the Wilsons, it was a triumphant return to the place they had always called home.